In, in today's news, the curfew has been extended, and we are live today with the organizers of the local Black Lives Matter protest.
UK denies BVI's request for grants. All this and more when 284 News returns.
There's a reason you get up on a morning. A reason you pick yourself up, start the day. Maybe it's sheer grit. Maybe it's your ethics. Maybe it's because you know people like you are waiting. For people just like you. We all have our reasons, and for Republic Bank, that reason is you. Every little thing, every big thing. It's all about making a difference in your life. Because after 182 years, if it's one thing we're sure about, is that the difference is you. We're here to help.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Welcome everybody. It's Thursday, June 18th, 2020. A terrific Thursday that is, straight out of the beautiful British Virgin Islands. I'm Ron Grant.
And I am Javon Wilson. So happy to welcome you to another great edition of 284 News right here in the beautiful
Indeed.
BVI. Ron, a lot has been going on. First of all, did you miss me?
I sure did. Yeah. You sure
All right.
did.
Viewers, lots to get into today. Lots of news, that is. We're going to begin with the curfew extension. Now, as the territory continues its fight against the novel coronavirus here in the British Virgin Islands, the government has further relaxed the curfew that was implemented to curb the spread of COVID-19. Now, as of yesterday, June 17th, Cabinet advised that the National Security Council instruct the Attorney General to draft a new curfew order, number 22 of 2020, which takes effect from today, June 18th, to include moving the curfew hours between 12 midnight to 5 a.m., extending the hours of access to beaches from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m., increasing of mass gatherings for faith-based organizations, graduations, weddings, and funerals, only with one person per 64 square feet up to a maximum of 100 people, allowing private vessels to use territorial waters during full daylight hours from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m., and allowing ferries to operate in territorial waters within the curfew hours between the hours of 5 a.m. and midnight. Now, while open to relaxing the guidelines in a careful managed approach, the Premier of the Virgin Islands is still somewhat apprehensive about the way the residents are policing themselves in this pandemic. Premier Foy said, quote, "I am concerned that people are not social distancing, standing 6 feet apart from each other. We are becoming complacent. We are not wearing our masks, which should only cover our nose to our chin. Each day we ignore these very important steps. As COVID-19 continues, we are putting our lives at risk. I am asking all of us to do our part. Let us all continue to encourage each other as we continue in the new regular living and working with COVID-19. Let's continue to be proactive. Let's continue to work in oneness of purpose. Let us stay informed and remain laser focused. Each of us has a role to play to help our economy and keep us safe," he said. Now, viewers, this follows the repatriation of some BVI landers and residents, some of who were alleged to not be following the mandatory 14-day quarantine guideline as the territory run the risk of reinfection. Other observers have denounced the stringent policing of persons, claiming that COVID-19 is not a death sentence and that we should not embrace and that we should embrace the idea of building immunity and managing the virus as opposed to just reacting to it. That, however, has been combated by strong discrimination of returnees, with one tenant reporting to us very specifically that she was forced out of a home by her landlord and agreeing health officials. To date, the territory has confirmed a total of 8 cases with 7 recoveries and 1 death. And Ron, the latter part of that report is a conversation we've been having over the last couple of weeks as it relates to persons returning to the territory. Yes. And our management of those persons. Again, persons are caught on both sides of the spectrum as it relates to our policies, but nevertheless, we've seen some level of discrimination in the community.
Well, as it is pertaining to the discrimination, I think the Honorable Premier and Leader of Government Business spoke against that. But at the end of the day, what I think needs to be had is a level of communication between all stakeholders. And I mean
Definitely.
the landlords, family, friends. It has to be a connectivity, because what we see is that some conversations are sometimes being had with not everyone. And as a result, we see persons, particularly, for example, like landlords, feeling perhaps left out of the loop in a sense, feeling as though they weren't prepared, they don't know. And I think in these trying times, in these specific times, at least certain measures should be communicated to them, so they have an ability and an opportunity to retract or to say their stance on either of the cases.
Fully agree.
Continuing on, residents in the 7th and 8th districts will be engaged in classes for the Complete Health Improvement Program, CHIP, next week. These classes will be held on June 23rd at the Francis Letson Primary School in East End, Tortola, and will be facilitated by lifestyle educator, managing director of Nature's Way Virgin Islands, and health director at the Maranatha Seventh-day Adventist Church, Mrs. Joanne Penn, and retired public officer and former acting chief agriculture officer, Mrs. Arona Foy Forbes. Now, Mrs. Penn is very passionate about helping others experience the benefits of a healthy lifestyle with CHIP, having recovered from personal illnesses herself through the application of sound lifestyle practices, while Mrs. Foy Forbes combines her love for agriculture and growing foods to support a healthy lifestyle. The Honorable Minister of Education and Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries and Agriculture, Dr. the Honorable Natalio D. Wheely, announced his support for the program at the first CHIP information session on June 9th and has sponsored 10 scholarships. Now, each scholarship is at $170 per participant, and recipients will only have to pay $30. The CHIP course has a cost of $200, which covers the cost of text and online resources. Persons, of course, interested in receiving the scholarship are asked to sign up for the program by downloading the registration form at bvi.gov.vg/VICHIP and by submitting via email to chipvirginislands@gmail.com. Interested persons can also contact the BVI Health Promotion Unit via telephone number 468-4936. Now, CHIP is a 10 to 12 week course that teaches participants how to boost their health and lead a healthier lifestyle. The strategy of scientifically based with proven results is preventing and arresting the reversing chronic diseases. Each session will run for approximately 2 hours and will be led by 22 certified facilitators from the Virgin Islands who were trained in the territory in November of last year. Classes are being held on the 4 main locations: East End, Rowtown, Virgin Gorda, and of course our sister islands of Joss Van Dyke. For more information, follow CHIP BVI on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for updates and classes. A very positive, holistic approach as it pertains to health. Many persons have been seeking a different alternative, I think, as it pertains to figuring out options, and we're happy to see CHIP being launched in the Virgin Islands, so encouraging persons, as usual, to sign up.
Love it. Lifestyle is definitely the
Indeed.
word that comes to mind when we think about the CHIP program, simply because I think what they're pushing is a lifestyle
Indeed.
shift, just encouraging persons to buy into the culture, because a lot of us visit the doctor, Ron, not necessarily aware of what's happening with us,
Right.
and we know our bodies best. But a lot of us don't take the time to figure out what's happening with our body. So not just rushing off to the doctor, but
I
really
agree.
recognizing how your body operates, and also buying into the culture that you too, by corrective measure, can take care of yourself without even having to visit the official.
And understanding as well that looks can be very deceiving.
Yes.
So it's not a matter of being slim or looking slim, or seeing someone who may have a little bit more weight than you and just assuming that they're less healthier. That's not how it works. But still ahead, UK denies BVI's request for grants, and we are live with 2 of the BVI's most brilliant young professionals and organizers of the local Black Lives Matter protests. All this and more after a word from our sponsors. You're watching 284 News.
Is business slow? Cash flow down? Hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media@cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works.
Viewers, welcome back. You're watching 284 News. Now on to a very important story. During the most recent sitting of the Virgin Islands House of Assembly, Leader of Government Business, the Honorable Andrew A. Foy, stated that the United Kingdom has denied the territory's grant to assist in the fight against COVID-19. According to Premier Foy, this is not the first time the UK has refused to give the BVI grants during a time of crisis. He said in an official statement in the House of Assembly, and I quote, in 2017, according to the former Minister for Works and Communications, the UK shut down the request for grants to help the BVI people to cope with the catastrophic damage to the infrastructure, economy, and social situation following the catastrophic hurricanes. Here we are seeing again in another catastrophic event, the UK is saying no to grants. The UK says it cannot afford to give grants because its own finances are stressed. The UK's money is for UK citizens, not the Virgin Islands citizens, and not for overseas territories. Now in March, we would of course remember when Premier Foy announced his government's plan to seek assistance from the UK to assist local residents who were unemployed as a result of COVID-19. Now, despite being denied the grant, Foy still expressed gratitude to the United Kingdom government for their contributions to the territory of the Virgin Islands in other cases and other areas. He said, and I quote, "We do have to thank them for areas that they have helped with, which match the 12 million to start the prevention measures, to get the test kits and other medical supplies from the UK, which was a good compliment to our efforts." Now, these are statements, of course, Jovan, again, coming out of the House of Assembly, essentially where the Leader of Government Business is saying and has announced that the UK has denied. And to be honest with you, as a resident and a voter, I am like, big surprise.
Ron, big surprise, yes. And yes, the pandemic is affecting the world, but we are a British overseas territory. And I think we still have to remember that we stand to benefit, you know?
And I absolutely agree with you, but I have to say, and I have to reiterate where we touched on this topic prior to the fact that we did not at the time have a stimulus package, but we were seeing announcements made by the local government appealing to the UK. And these are some of the very same points. You're not the only overseas territory. The UK themselves are in a dire situation. And again, I have to go back to the loan guarantee. You have not even been able to secure that. So how are you going to ask for additional assistance?
Fair point, but it might be an isolated case now because we are in a pandemic. But let's reflect on Irma.
Yes.
At one point, we were too rich to receive help. You know, when we were going through a Category 5 hurricane, and now we look at COVID. That is that's parallel to the hurricane that we had in 2017, and we have to acknowledge that the United Kingdom has not done enough to assist the British Virgin Islands and all the other islands that were affected, the overseas territory islands that were affected by hurricanes Irma and Maria. And yes, I think this is half the reason why I think the government is such in a scurry to diversify the economies, because we are realizing more and more that self-governance and paving the way to autonomy is so important and critical at this point, because there is no place, you cannot look to the United Kingdom anymore.
I totally agree with you, but I also want our local government and our local people to hold our government accountable and understand their stance and their part that they play in not only taking care of their own country, but securing assistance. There's a huge part that they have to play, and of course, we've talked about the relationship between the BVI and the UK. That's very important, but they have to adopt and they have to really acknowledge the part they played, and perhaps a lack of just consciousness in how things were handled. You have to agree and say that, hey, I played a part in it too at the end of the day, and I think that's what we're failing to see here.
That accountability is very important, so I do agree with you. Now, viewers, amidst everything that's going on around the world and joining the local conversation, we have two stalwarts.
Absolutely.
We like to refer to them as in our community, lending ears, voice, and everything else to the global Black Lives Movement. Right here in the British Virgin Islands, we are now set to protest on Saturday, the 20th of June. That is this Saturday. And of course, we have them in studio to speak with us. So, Mr. Nicoy Hendrickson, Mr. Via Donovan Hodge, welcome to 284 Media.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so to begin with, a lot of persons have said, this is not our business, we have no place, it does not apply to us. someone even went as far as to say that the BVI is exempted from this crisis, and it's a crisis as I refer to it as. In your opinion, are we exempted from what's going on on the international scene?
No, not at all. Not in any capacity. I think that comments that this is not the BVI's business, etc., are born out of a place of we do have a certain amount of privilege being the majority in our country. You know, we are the black majority in this country. We are people of mixed heritages, and you know, we have lots of different things that come together and make us who we are. But we, you know, we get to grow up. I got to grow up and have teachers in my elementary school and my high school who all looked like me. You know, if I had a white teacher, then it was like, you know, whoa, this is a rare thing. Our politicians all look like us, you know. So it's quite different to the experience. I go to a PWI, primarily white institution for college in America, in New York. And I have had, I think, 2, that might be a stretch, maybe 1 black professor during my 4 years there, and it's, you know,
what
quite
a contrast.
Yeah, it's parallel experiences. So in that manner, we are very much blessed, and you know, we do get to enjoy a certain amount of luxury. I think we do have to realize though that because we have different backgrounds and because we do have those privileges, that we didn't grow up the same. You know, we don't grow up with the psychological trauma that African Americans do, because that's the systematic racism has affected them, has affected their parents, has affected their grandparents, and going back up to, you know, slavery. And it's something that's ingrained and something that has been prevalent within their societies. And, you know, they have the fears of, you know, encounters with the police that we don't have to worry about down here. Like, you know, you hear a cop car here, the most you're worried about most of the time is if you're going to get a ticket or if somebody going to harass you for driving a little bit too fast on the highway. But it's not like, you know, I fear in the BVI that getting pulled over by the police is going to be the end of my life. And that's a very real fear for African American people in the States, and for black people in the States who aren't African American, anybody who goes there. So I think we need to acknowledge that we do have different experiences and try to understand from different perspectives, you know, how things might play differently. I think we also need to come out of this thing where it's just like, I have an issue with our generation. And I think that with my generation, we have this popular thing where we say, you know, ain't my business.
Right.
And sweetie,
Speak to it.
everybody who know me know I nosy bad, because I do believe that, you know, things that affect my friends, my family, people around me, people in my community, my life, my world, like, it's my business. And if I am in a place in which I can say something about it, I will, you know, say something and make that move. So I think we need to take a step out of, you know, this is selfish, and if this doesn't directly affect me, I'm not going to speak on it. Because when we go to America, as Nikoi quite eloquently keeps saying, nobody sees you and says, oh, he's from the British Virgin Islands. He's exempt from the racism that I feel every day, you know? They see black. That is all that is seen when you are in those spaces, and you will be treated as such. And to then turn around knowing that and say that it is not your issue seems highly problematic and highly evasive of the truth. And
I think it's some level of implicit bias, if you ask me, because another thing is, like, you spoke to Nicoy's experience, and we're going to get into that. We reported in this very forum just a couple of weeks ago that even 2 days prior to George Floyd's death, an Antiguan was killed, you know, and just a week prior to that, a Jamaican was killed. So like you said, many of our nationals go away and they integrate into that the American society. And like you said, they don't identify Caribbean or Jamaican or, you know, BV Islander. They see black. Now, Nikoi, the deeper we get into this conversation, the more we are realizing how many persons around us are victims of this very specific situation in the United States. I know you too would have run into some experiences yourself. Can you share with us, please?
Well, I moved to the United States for the first time in 2013, after my second form year here. When I got there, I moved to South Carolina, which is where, as some of us may know, that's where some of the slaves entered into the United States. So racism was very prominent there. It was festered all through their culture. And a lot of the times, I can speak to a few experiences, like one of them where I was out on the lawn waiting for a ride to the gym, and a police officer stopped and questioned me as to whether I lived there, my name, who do I live there with. They drove away, came back, pulled into the yard to say, well, oh, they're waiting to see if who I said is coming for me is actually coming for me. And that's just me, a black individual that was 2013, so I was 14, sitting on the porch on the lawn, waiting to get a ride to the YMCA just to go lift some weights, play some basketball, come back home. And I was harassed in that way. It happened in school, in the gym, where you would be bench pressing, and everyone has a spotter in the gym, and they would move from behind you when it's your turn. After you spotted them to make sure that the weight doesn't fall on their chest and so on, they would move from behind of you. So it's so many different experiences. Even in Philadelphia, when I walk to and from school, my classes end at 8 o'clock sometimes. I'm cold. I'm from the Caribbean, and I bulk up, and because my hoodie is on, my beanie is on, a cop would stop me like, hey, where are you headed to? And I'm simply just trying to get home, trying to get out of the cold. I'm not bothering anyone. I'm just walking from class. So it is an issue for us because I am of the British Virgin Islands soil, and I have been harassed several times in the United States. And they don't see, like Fia just said, they don't see British Virgin Islands written across my face. They see black.
And that sentiment has been echoed by many persons locally, including our Minister of Culture, Dr. the Honorable Natalia Whitley, our boss and CEO, Avrat Penn. So many persons and so many experiences to go around. And you mentioned the hoodie, and it took me back to the story of Trayvon Martin, because he was gunned down in the streets because he was wearing a hoodie. And at the time, I think 16 years old, simply on the way back from a store. I think he went to get a pack of Skittles or something like that. But it just goes to show the significance and the profiling just because of our skin color. So this Saturday, June 20th, the march is on. First of all, tell us why you saw it necessary for us to walk in the BVI for this cause.
It was a necessary action, I think, because, as Martin Luther King said, in the end, we will not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And it was 2 weeks, I think, after George Floyd had been murdered. And, you heard world leaders coming out from all corners of the globe, even here in the Caribbean, and saying something. And I'm sitting here, in the BVI, and I was hearing silence around me. And it bothered me that nobody had said anything. And I decided, I think there is something that needs to be said. And as I said previously, we are highly intertwined with the U.S. And even if I hadn't personally gone to school in the States and, had experiences with that, let's not act like, we don't have tourists who don't come to the BVI with their preconceived notions of black people and, make those, like, it travels. It's not a mindset that stays within borders. And I think that we need to stand up for something, because after Irma happened, I live in the States. I was in New York when Irma happened. And we as a people who were away, but still people of the BVI and still people of the same blood and same cloth, realized that, our people back home need something. And we gathered and we rallied and we got resources and supplies to send back home, because our people should matter no matter where they are. We realized we weren't getting what we needed from the UK, and we took it upon ourselves to incite that change. And I think that the same thing is happening here. We are in a place of privilege, and our brothers and sisters in the U.S. and in other corners of the globe need our help. And, they need voices and need to know that they are not standing alone in this. And this march in conjunction is not only a march in solidarity and a symbolism thing. It's to raise awareness, to start new conversations. And we will be, all the T-shirts that are for sale are with the Crazy Threads and Nova Vita.
Correct.
And the donations from these T-shirts are going towards Colin Kaepernick's foundation. He's started a foundation called Know Your Rights, in which he helps educate African American youth into knowing their rights and how they can navigate within America due to everything that has happened to him in his career, etc. And after George Floyd's murder, he added to that and said, I will post bail for, peaceful protesters who have been wrongfully arrested, because we know that is happening en masse. We keep hearing about these instances. So he came out, he was one of the first people who came out and said, I'm going to post bail. So that's where our money is going. It's not just, I'm going to say something because I want to follow a trend and, have a march. We are marching for something, we are doing something. And people keep bringing up, stuff within our community that we do need to address. And I do agree, we do have a large number of issues that we within ourselves need to reflect on and look at. And there's a catalyst for change happening now. And I think, gathering that and raising awareness and starting a conversation is the only way to begin getting to where we want to be.
All right, very quickly, we're kind of running out of time, but many persons are asking or inquiring, do you have government's endorsements? Are the officials on your side? Are they opposed to this? What are your thoughts?
We are untethered from the government in this. This was an individual, not individual as myself, but individual as the group movement, something that we all felt moved to do and decided to do without government's help or approval. Whether government officials decide to personally support the cause, I have heard from some of them, and they do feel like the need to come and march and support the movement, but we are not officially endorsed by them. This is not a political scheme. This is not something that is driven by politics, and it's us standing for justice no matter where that justice lies.
All right, guys, quite a mouthful, very eloquently said. We want to thank you not just only for your effort, but for the awareness that this type of protest is going to bring to the British Virgin Islands. And like we say often here, racism is everywhere. It may be overt, it may be systematic, but it exists. And I think it's about time we have that conversation. And viewers, that conversation continues this Saturday. We are leaving the Noah Lloyd Park at 2:30 p.m., heading into the Queen Elizabeth Park. That is the Queen Elizabeth Park, correct?
Yes, Queen Elizabeth
Awesome.
Second Park.
Where the program will continue. Viewers, we have to move right along into our final story for today. Now, as we continue to lend voice, ear, and action to the global movement of Black Lives Matter following the horrendous killing of George Floyd by police officers, a son of the soil, Mr. Benito Wheatley, is not only acknowledging the existence of racist byproducts in our very territory, but also calling on residents to stamp it out. Mr. Wheatley said, quote, "At home, the BVI should not overlook its own often subtle problems of discrimination within the society. It is undeniable that prejudice of different kinds exist between societal groups on the islands. However, for decades, the society has largely operated peacefully, preoccupied with economic activity and the pursuits of modern life," end of quote. Now, while civility has taken precedence, Mr. Whitley further acknowledged that, quote, "Social tensions continue to bubble below the surface that periodically erupt when issues around immigration and employment arise. As it stands, the BVI is comprised of 137 different nationalities of different races, while BVI landers account for less than 40% of the population. Now, varying backgrounds, beliefs, and prejudices have resulted in segregation and heavy discrimination by various groups. This was further supported by Mr. Whitley, who said, quote, "Enclaves have formed that have not been balanced by robust efforts in past years to effectively integrate the society's various groups into a wider BVI community. There has also been failure to effectively monitor and police economic and social discrimination by different groups towards each other," he said. Now, while the issues remain sensitive, Mr. Whitley is adamant that they must be highlighted, acknowledged and addressed as it continues to cripple the very society that we are trying to build collectively. He's encouraging a national social dialogue where residents can, quote, "responsibly and maturely discuss their challenges and frustrations without fear and with a view to gaining mutual understanding and beginning to address some of the long-standing issues." And with a dire need to understand the social and economic dynamics as well, he's also pushing for an objective, independent study of social relations, social cohesion, and economic relations within the society that can provide a clearer picture of the situation on the ground. Now, as it relates quickly to the immediate reform of the workplace, he's also saying that existing systems for anonymous reporting and investigation into discrimination in the workplace at all levels and by companies in their businesses practices should be strengthened, along with enforcement of the laws already on the book. Now, while again it is a sore issue, Mr. Whitley is very positive that we can move past those confines and live in a more blended society. Now, Ron, we've heard the conversations of what's happening on the international scene,
Yes.
and many persons have said yes, we should march, we should stand in solidarity with what's going on the international arena as it relates to the killing of George Floyd. But equally, many persons are now acknowledging the fact that whether it's blatant or not, the byproducts of racism exist
course.
within our community. And we see Mr. Whitley really acknowledging that to be a part of the issues that we have, and acknowledging as well that if we are shedding light on what's happening internationally, we have to first begin the repair at home.
I am so appreciative of his comments and his honesty and his appreciation for the truth locally, and I think that we can only continue to chart the narrative, which is what we will continue to do.
All right, viewers, we are out of time. That is it for today's news roundup. But you can be sure to follow us for daily updates at 284media.com. We're also on Facebook at 284media and Instagram and Twitter at 284BVI. I am Javon Wilson.
And I'm Ron Grant. We'll see you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.